Grüner Veltliner is able to deliver from an entry-level wine, but it can move up to a really full-bodied, really concentrated, but also elegant wine. You can also make an ice wine or an Trockenbeeren in Austria, a TBA. So with the Grüner Veltliner, you have the whole range of all the possibilities.
So in styles, in sweetness, in weight, and so on. Now,
yes.
One descriptor I've heard is white pepper. Is that typical of Grüner Veltliner, and why would that be, if so?
It is. The peppery taste you find very often in the Grüner, but you find also a lot of other spices in the nose. Mm-hmm. But you have also yellow fruits, stone fruits, and which type of soil it grows. That makes a huge difference in style-wise.
Do you have a thirst to learn about wine? Do you love stories about wonderfully obsessive people, hauntingly beautiful places, and amusingly awkward social situations? Well, that's the blend here on the Unreserved Wine Talk podcast. I'm your host, Natalie McLean, and each week I share with you unfiltered conversations with celebrities in the wine world, as well as confessions from my own tipsy journey as I write my third book on this subject. I'm so glad you're here. Now pass me that bottle, please, and let's get started. Welcome to episode 113. Why do sommeliers love Grüner Veltliner? How does this zesty white wine from Austria compare to, say, Gewürztraminer and Riesling? Does it age well? And what are the best food pairings for it? That's exactly what you'll discover in this episode of the Unreserved Wine Talk podcast. I'm chatting with Rudi Rabl, who owns a family-run winery in Austria that's been making wine for 12 generations, including incredible Grüner Veltliner. This conversation took place on my Facebook Live video show several years ago, so please keep that in mind as the context for Rudi's comments. In the show notes, you'll find links to the wines we tasted, the video version of this chat, and a full transcript, how you can join me in a free online wine and food pairing class, and where you can find me on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube live video every Wednesday at 7 p.m. That's all in the show notes at nataliemclean.com/113. Now, on a personal note before we dive into the show, Miles will be watching football downstairs this weekend while I watch Your Honor on HBO upstairs. That is such a good show. The only thing I know about football is that Tom Brady is gorgeous. He's a tight end, right? Okay, so I know he's a quarterback. And I also know how to pair wine with game or movie snacks. What about you? What will you be watching this weekend? I'd love to hear from you. Tag me on social media at Natalie McLean on Facebook or Twitter, or on Instagram, I'm at Natalie McLean Wine. Okay, on with the show. We are going to explore the ultimate wine for spring. It's fresh, it's crisp, it's Grüner Veltliner. Yes, I know that's a mouthful, but you need to know this wine if you want to maximize your pleasure this spring. And we have one of the best people, one of the best producers to talk about Grüner Veltliner. He's joining me from Austria. Welcome, Rudi Rabl.
Hello.
Hi.
Regards to
Hello.
Canada.
Well, thank you, Rudi, for being here with us. We really appreciate you joining us. So let's kick it off actually with you, Rudi, before we dive into Grüner Veltliner, spring pairings and all kinds of things. Can you remember the moment when you first realized that you wanted to become a winemaker?
Well, it's a long time ago. We make it since 1750, so the family is long in the wine business, and everyone got it with the mother milk, the business from generation to generation. But I remember when I was with my grandfather and helped him to bring the grapes from the trailer to the press. That was really my first impression. And then he gave me a glass of the fresh pressed juice, and that was where I really remember the first time.
So it was that taste of that fresh pressed juice, and you thought, wow,
Yes.
that's something special, and I want to be involved in that.
Yeah,
There is
absolutely.
usually a moment, isn't it? And it's often when we taste something, whether it's wine or in your case as a child with the fresh juice. That's lovely. So, what number generation did you mention of your family are you in terms of being a winemaker?
The 12th,
12th. Wow. Okay, so when did the family start making wine or was in the wine industry?
1750.
1750.
1750, yeah.
That is amazing. Wow, that must be quite a history. And do you have siblings who are also involved in the wine industry or the winery?
A little bit. My wife is in the winery.
Sure.
My son starts in autumn with winemaker school, and my father is still also working in the winery, and so it's always a family business.
Okay, so let's get into Grüner Veltliner because it's a wine that I think not everyone knows. I mean, if you're really passionate about wine and you like to explore, for us in North America, I should say, I'm sure in Europe it's much better known and certainly in Austria, but for us in North America, it's one thing to just even pronounce the name of this wine, but it's another thing to be familiar with it. So, Grüner Veltliner, I'm holding up one of your many vineyard editions. Can you describe what this wine tastes like?
I can describe how this, in special this bottle, but it's not easy to describe the Grüner Veltliner in general because the Grüner Veltliner is one varietal, but is able to deliver from a simple wine and basic wine and an entry-level wine, what you drink fresh and fruity on the terrace, but it can move up to a really full-bodied, really concentrated, intense, but also elegant wine. You can also make an ice wine or an Trockenbeeren Auslese, a TBA. So with the Grüner Veltliner, you have the whole range of all the possibilities what you can do with the Grüner Veltliner.
Right. So in styles, in sweetness, in weight, and so on. Now,
Yes.
one descriptor I've heard, Rudi, but let me know what you think, is white pepper. Is that typical of Grüner Veltliner, and why would that be, if so?
I can't say why it is, but it is. The peppery taste you find very often in the Grüner, but you find also a lot of other spices in the nose. But you have also often very, very fruit-driven, yellow fruits, stone fruits. But that's where it grows, in which places, which type of soil it grows. That makes a huge difference in style-wise.
Sure. And it's such a versatile wine. What are some of your favorite food pairings with Grüner Veltliner?
As Austrian, I have to say a Wiener Schnitzel
Oh, yes.
because that's my favorite Austrian dish. But I prefer Grüner Veltliner also to a lot of Asian dishes, to food where you can play with the herbs, with the spices. That's always good with the Grüner Veltliner.
So I guess because it has that natural spice character. And when you say spice, people try to understand what that means in a wine. Do you mean sort of the lighter spices that also come through in Gewürztraminer, like the lighter, I don't know, baking spices or nutmeg, white pepper? How can people understand what spice is in Grüner Veltliner?
You said Gewürztraminer, and that's correct, the right direction, because Grüner Veltliner is a crossing between Gewürztraminer. Traminer is the mother, and they was seeking for a long time for the Pfarrer, and they found in a small village in Burgenland, that's on the east border to Hungary, they found in the village one plant, and there they found the father. And so it's a little bit familiar to the Gewürztraminer.
I actually didn't realize that. So it's a cross between Gewürztraminer and another vine. So it would have some aromatic similarities with Gewürztraminer than those spicy characters and so on. I just find it very, very food friendly. I mean, when you get crisp acidity, and we shouldn't be afraid of acidity, it's kind of what salt is to food, I find. Acidity is to wine. It brings forward the flavor of both the wine and the food. But it's just ultimately so food friendly in terms of from seafood and shellfish to vegetarian. I can't think of many dishes that wouldn't go with a Grüner Veltliner other than perhaps maybe a big juicy steak, something like that. So, Rudi, what are the challenges of making wine in Austria? It's a cool climate, but what is particularly challenging about making wine in Austria?
What we see the last years is the climate change. In one way, it's good for us because we are really a cool climate country. And With the climate change, we have an earlier bug spring. So the shot starts early with growing. And then we have some late frosts like this year. And that's always a little bit of challenge. But the problem is in general with the wine growing here. But with the climate change, it is better and better for the ripening, for the
right, because you're getting a longer ripening season. It's getting warmer.
Yeah.
And what does an early frost do? What happens then? What damage or what's the downside of an early frost for you?
Yeah, it damaged some bunches. This year we had a nice spring. Last year we had some region, they lost up to 40-50%.
Oh, wow. 50%. Wow, that's a lot. Why don't you think Grüner Veltliner is better known in North America? Is it just because of the small production and it's traditionally been mostly consumed in Austria or Europe? Or is it because of just trying to pronounce it in a store and ask for it? Or why don't more people know about Grüner Veltliner?
It's simple. We produce here in Austria less than 1% of the whole world wine market.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So in real, we produce nothing. We have in Austria around 45,000 hectares. That's less than Bordeaux. But on the other hand, with the Grüner Veltliner, really in Europe, a really well-known varietal. And also in US, in the big cities, you find a lot of restaurants, a lot of wine shops where you find the Grüner Veltliner.
Yes, it seems to be the darling of sommeliers. Sommeliers love this wine, especially in fine restaurants.
Because it's so food friendly.
Yeah.
And I tried since 2004 that I bring this wine also to Canada to explain what Grüner Veltliner is and to show it by tasting.
And what's the mark of a fine Grüner Veltliner? How do we know we've hit on a good one? How would you say you need to look for this, this, and this, or something that marks a really good Grüner Veltliner?
I think if you go to the monopoly shops in Canada, you can pick every Grüner Veltliner because only the good wines go in export. The basic wines are always in the country, and the bigger wineries or the wineries with more passion, they also go in export in different export markets. They sell, and so I think there's not really a bad wine in one of the Canadian stores.
Well, that's good to know. It's reassuring. Yeah, it is a small section, small but mighty and growing. I don't know if you know offhand how fast Austrian wine sales are growing in North America. It's okay if you don't. I'm just surprising you with that question, sorry. But it must be healthy growth that you're experiencing, given the efforts that I've been seeing with Austrian wines here in the country. Do you know how quickly Austrian wines are growing as a category, either in Canada or North America?
It's not really quick growing. And in real, we can't grow too much because the Austrian people are so traditional. They drink 80% Austrian wine. So the domestic market is really a strong market for us, a good market. And we drink in Austria around 30 liter. And 30 liter with 8 million people, that means 2.4 million hectoliters wine. And that's exact the average what we produce. Okay. So all what we export, we have to import. And if we can grow each year with 1-2%, then it's on a good way.
You're happy. Okay. So you drink 80% of it. That's a lot, like a lot of wine regions. Even here in Canada, BC, it's one of the reasons we can't get a lot of BC wines here in Ontario. It's because they're drinking it all, or a lot of it. But that's fine. That's good. It's an artisanal, small boutique category that's growing slowly but surely. So Stephen is asking, it's very easy to drink. What appetizer, Rudi, would you suggest to best pair with Grüner Veltliner? He's looking for appetizer ideas.
For appetizer, we have special appetizers. In Austria, we call it some creams, what we keep on the bread.
Right.
One is called Liptauer, that's with cheese, with some paprika. It's red colored. And appetizer. Also with salad, because the acidity of the Grüner Veltliner works often very well with salad.
Yeah, that would be a good pairing. Yeah, absolutely. I would think just in that family of fresh herbal, crisp white wines like Sauvignon Blanc, but Grüner Veltliner would
Yeah.
certainly be up there for fresh field greens. And Stephen is back. He's really determined to figure out all kinds of pairings, Rudi. He's wondering, would it go with a nice white fish simply prepared? Yeah. That would be great, wouldn't it?
Definitely.
And Stephen's making me hungry, and Rudi, you're making me thirsty. So I should try this one. Now, how many different Grüner Veltliners do you make? Because I see I assume, is that a vineyard designation under?
It's
Grüner?
Spiegel.
Yeah, so I'll put it up close here. Yeah.
That's the Grüner Veltliner Spiegel. But I make in general 12 different Grüner Veltliners.
Oh, wow.
That starts with a restaurant wine, but we sell to some restaurants in the 1 liter bottle. But very famous is in Austria is all the spritzer, that it's a mix between half wine, half sparkling water.
Okay, and you don't mind that?
Oh, I prefer it, yeah.
Oh, you do it yourself?
I drink more spritzer than beer if I'm thirsty.
Okay.
That's really, really tradition.
Oh.
And for the spritzer, we take the Austrian Grüner Veltliner. Then I have from different vineyards. So when I make it in categories, I have the Campbell PSC. So that's the domestic wine from different vineyards, from more villages. And then the next step, I have a Grüner Veltliner. It was called Terrassen. This is a wine. It grows on different terraces with different type of soil. So I have some lush terraces with the sandy lush soil, but I use also some fruits from prime rock terraces.
Okay, so rocky and sandy loam and the kind of soil that makes vine roots suffer, right? They kind of have to search deep down for that water and those nutrients.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
Then I have the village wine. That's the Langenlois. Langenlois is the village where our winery is. It's the center of the canton. And then it starts with some single vineyard wines. Like you have in your glass the Grüner Veltliner Spiegel. Spiegel I make really only for my agent in Ontario, not in the reserve category, in the classic style category. And all the other single vineyards are then in the reserve category. I have at the moment 4 different. Käferberg is the most famous, Dachand, Schenkenpike, and Loiserberg. That's the name of the vineyards.
Okay, wow. That's great. And now Austria is not really well known for red wines. So tell us about Saint Laurent. Is this another cross between 2 grapes we might be more familiar with, or is it a native?
No, Saint Laurent, it's a varietal, but Saint Laurent is one partner of the most popular Austrian red wine, the Zweigelt.
Oh, Zweigelt, yes.
Zweigelt.
Sure.
And Zweigelt is a crossing between Blaufränkisch and Saint Laurent.
Okay, Blaufränkisch. These are names that many of us are not familiar with, but we need to get to know. How would you compare Saint Laurent? You've got one there with you, I think. What kind of style? Is it medium-bodied? How would you describe it?
It's medium-bodied.
Okay.
This wine, I have it more on the fruity side.
Mm-hmm.
Without oak, is medium-bodied. I think it's with certain alcohol. I think it's a wine style, what you also can drink in the summer. A little bit chilled, not too warm, not too cold. So with around 14, 15 degrees. Yeah. I think it's also a nice summer wine because it's fruit-ridden. It's a little bit familiar with the Pinot Noir.
It is. It's fresh and fruity and not heavy. And you know, as we go into the summer months here and in Europe and the weather heats up, the last thing you want is high alcohol in your glass. So it's quite nice. And, you know, as you say, you can even serve it just with a slight chill on it for better refreshment, I think, too. We sometimes do that. So Lynn has joined us. And she's asking you, Rudi, what's the best year in the last decade?
Which vintage?
Yes.
2013, because this was structure, complexity, and really a good acidity. And also 2015. Maybe from the success, it's more 2015. For the quality, and if you want to store a wine for a couple of years, I think it's 2013. If you want to keep a Grüner Veltliner for 15, 20, 25 years, I think it's 2013 perfect vintage.
Wow. And we don't always think about aging white wines in general for a long time. But of course, one of the preservatives of wine is good acidity. And this certainly, Grüner Veltliner has it in spades. So, but hearing you say 15, 20 years, this could last. What happens as Gruner ages? Does it become nuttier or what comes out as it matures? 20 years on, what will this taste like?
The yellow fruit, what the Grüner Veltliner often has, goes more in the back. And the influence of the soil comes more in the front, more the blendstone, more the minerality, more these characters goes in the front. It's funny, always we also produce a lot of Riesling. And when I take from my vinotheque a bottle old or riper Riesling and the riper Grüner Veltliner from the same year, then the people are always surprised that the Grüner Veltliner is always better, always fresher. Riesling shows then, if it's 10, 15, 20 years old, they put the petrol taste, and the Grüner Veltliner is really good.
That's an interesting comparison between Riesling and Grüner Veltliner. Rudi, a few questions to sort of wrap up our segment. What is kind of your most memorable winemaking experience? At the beginning of our conversation, you described that moment when you first tasted the juice as a child, and that was lovely. But in your years of winemaking, is there a particular moment that has stood out for you?
There's definitely a particular moment. It was in the year 2006. I sent Grüner Veltliner from the vineyard Kipperberg to the decanter. And it was after the school, I come home and we learned to use a lot of yeast to make wine and the different type of yeast. You can make this and that and that. And my grandfather said, what should we do with the yeast? We don't need the yeast. It always fermented from alone and that's wasted money. and I tried different things, and 2004, I made the step back with the Grüner Veltliner Kipperberg without yeast.
Without yeast?
And without yeast, so wild fermentation.
So you depended on, just so for folks who are not familiar with this, a wild yeast that just sort of settled on the juice to ferment it instead of adding your own yeast.
Yes.
Okay.
And I sent this wine to London to the decanter world, wine world, and won in the first step the best Austrian Grüner Veltliner.
Wow. And
in the second step, it was then the best white wine in the world from an autochtone varietal. Expect Riesling and Chardonnay and Sauvignon.
That's great. What a great experiment. And do you continue with wild yeast?
Absolute. From this moment, I made more and more. Okay. And I think that's a good way.
Yeah, it really shows the land, the terroir, to use a buzzword, but really shows and expresses the soil and so on. So, Rudi, thank you so much for being here with us. We really appreciate it, especially since it's midnight your time. So thank you. You're a real sport for joining us here. Thank you, Rudi, and good luck with this year's harvest.
Natalie, thank you to invite me for this chat.
Okay.
And I'm sure this year I have not the time, but next year I want to come back to Canada.
Yes.
And I hope I met a lot of people there for some tastings, and I'll let you know when I come.
Please do. That would be wonderful. And we look forward to tasting more of your wines.
Okay. Thank you.
Take
Bye-bye.
care.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, there you have it. I hope you enjoyed my chat with Rudi Rabl. Here are my takeaways. Number 1, Austria is a boutique wine producer, a country that makes less wine than the region of Bordeaux. 2, it's great to know that we get the best wines in North America, as well as other regions that get Austrian exports, as these tend to be exported rather than the ordinary vin de table, especially since the country produces less than what its citizens consume on average each year. 3, Grüner Veltliner is such a versatile wine, both stylistically and when it comes to food pairings. No wonder it is a favorite of sommeliers. 4, I've said it before and I'll say it again. We shouldn't be afraid of acidity. What salt is to food, acidity is to wine. It brings forward flavor in both the wine and the food. And 5, One of the preservatives of wine is good acidity, and Grüner has it in spades. So yes, these wines can age well, though they're also very vibrant and fresh when they're young. In the show notes, you'll find links to the wines we tasted, the video version of this chat and a full transcript, how you can join me in a free online wine and food pairing class, and where you can find me on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube live video every Wednesday at 7 p.m. That's all in the show notes at nataliemaclean.com/113. You won't want to miss next week when I'm going solo to talk about seduction wines for Valentine's Day, plus the rising level of alcohol in wine overall and how it affects our palates, minds, and bodies. In the meantime, if you missed episode 81, go back and take a listen. I chat with another Austrian winemaker, Heidi Marie Pfaffel, about Grüner Veltliner and other wines that her family-owned winery produces. I'll share a short clip with you now to whet your appetite.
Grüner can be so versatile. You can have a Grüner that's lively and fresh, but you also can find quite rich and full-bodied Grüners that somehow remind you of Chardonnay. We often have tastings of old Grüner Veltliners in comparison to old Burgundy wines, and it's often hard to find the difference.
So they age well because they've got the acidity, which is one of the aging elements.
Yes, but also not all of them are the same. You have some very full-bodied, rich ones that age really well, the reserve styles, but you also have these easy-drinking, lively, fresh Grüners. They are really made for be drunk young.
If you like this episode, please tell a friend about it this week, especially someone you know who'd be interested in the tips that Rudi shared. Thank you for taking the time to join me here. I hope something great is in your glass this week, perhaps a zesty Grüner Veltliner paired with Wiener Schnitzel. You don't want to miss one juicy episode of this podcast, especially the secret, full-bodied bonus episodes that I don't announce on social media. So, subscribe for free now at nataliemaclean.com/subscribe. Meet me here next week. Cheers.